The paper felt like burning coal in her pocket. Sophie knew that if anyone saw what she had written, she wouldn't just lose her job. She'd lose her life. At table 4 sat Dominic Moretti, the man who owned half the city, laughing softly as his girlfriend, Vanessa, poured him wine. But Sophie had heard the phone call in the bathroom. She knew what was waiting outside the heavy oak doors. As she reached for the water pitcher, her hand trembled. It was suicide to intervene, but it was murder to stay silent. She took a breath, slid the folded napkin under his wineglass, and prayed he would look down before the bullets started flying. The dinner rush at Le Jardin was always chaos, but for Sophie Miller, chaos was where she disappeared. That was the job. Be invisible. Refill the water, clear the crumbs, ignore the conversations about money laundering, affairs and politics that floated through the candle-lit air. She was 24, broke, and trying to finish a nursing degree that felt further away with every double shift. Tonight, the VIP section was occupied by the only man who made the kitchen staff stop talking, Dominic Moretti. Even in a city like Chicago, where crime and business often shared the same bed, Dominic was a legend. He wasn't just a mob boss. He was a phantom. They said he moved silence like a weapon. He was handsome, in a terrifying, jagged way, dark eyes that seemed to absorb the light, a jawline that could cut glass, and a tailored suit that cost more than Sophie's tuition. Across from him sat Vanessa, beautiful, blonde, and glowing with the kind of polished perfection that came from old money and new surgeries. She was laughing, touching his arm, playing the part of the adoring girlfriend perfectly. Sophie adjusted her apron and picked up the water pitcher. She was covering for Jen, who had flu-like symptoms, which usually meant a hangover. Sophie didn't mind. The tips in the VIP section were good. She walked past the restrooms on her way to the floor when she heard a voice. It was sharp, hushed, and coming from the slightly cracked door of the women's lounge. "I'm telling you, he's totally relaxed," the voice hissed. It was Vanessa. Sophie froze. She pressed herself against the hallway wall, clutching the pitcher against her chest. "No, he has no idea," Vanessa continued, her tone stripping away all the warmth Sophie had seen at the table. It was cold, clinical. "The security detail is light tonight. He sent Rocco away to deal with the warehouse issue. It's just him and the driver out back. If you're going to hit him, it has to be when we walk out. Do you have the corner covered? Good. Don't miss. I want the money transferred by midnight." Sophie's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. A hit. They were going to kill him. Tonight, right here on the sidewalk of Le Jardin. She heard the click of a phone ending a call and the rustle of silk. Sophie scrambled backward, ducking into the kitchen just as Vanessa stepped out, checking her makeup in a compact mirror, looking for all the world like a woman in love, not a woman who had just signed a death warrant. Sophie leaned against the stainless steel counter, breathing hard. "Stay out of it," her brain screamed. "This is not your world. These people kill witnesses. If she did nothing, Dominic Moretti would walk out those doors and die. If she said something, she might die with him." She looked through the porthole window of the kitchen door. Dominic was checking his watch, looking bored but calm. He looked human. Dangerous, yes, but he didn't know the woman holding his hand was counting down the minutes to his execution. Sophie grabbed a clean napkin and a pen from the service station. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped the pen. She scribbled 4 sentences. She didn't have time to be poetic. She just had to be clear. Your girlfriend sold you out. They're in position outside. Don't walk out the front. Do not react. She folded the napkin into a tight, sharp square. She placed it on her tray under the stem of a fresh wine glass. "Table 4 needs a refill," the floor manager barked at her. "Move it, Miller." Sophie took a deep breath. She walked out onto the floor. The noise of the restaurant faded into a dull roar. All she could see was Dominic's back. She was walking toward a lion's den, and she was about to poke the beast. Sophie approached the table. Vanessa was mid-sentence, talking about a weekend trip to the Hamptons, a trip Sophie knew Dominic would never take. "More wine, sir?" Sophie asked. Her voice was steady, a miracle of acting. Dominic didn't look up immediately. He was swirling the red liquid in his glass, his eyes distant. "Please." Sophie reached over. This was the moment. She had to place the fresh glass and the napkin down without Vanessa noticing. Vanessa was busy texting under the table, probably confirming the hit. Sophie placed the fresh glass down. As she did, she pressed her thumb hard onto the folded napkin, sliding it directly under Dominic's hand, which rested on the tablecloth. It was a clumsy move, a risk. Dominic's hand flinched. He felt the paper. Sophie froze. If he pulled it out and asked, "What is this?" In front of Vanessa, they were both dead. Dominic stopped moving. He didn't look at the paper. He didn't look at Vanessa. Slowly, deliberately, he turned his head and looked up at Sophie. His eyes were terrifying, dark, intelligent, and currently confused. He looked at her face, memorizing her features in a split second. The messy bun, the name tag, the fear in her eyes that she couldn't quite hide. Sophie held his gaze for a microsecond, then flicked her eyes down to the napkin, then to Vanessa, then back to him. "Read it," she pleaded silently. "Please, just read it." Dominic's fingers curled over the napkin, palming it with the skill of a magician. He brought his hand to his lap seamlessly. "Thank you," he said. His voice was a low rumble, devoid of emotion. "Let me get you some fresh water as well," Sophie said, backing away. She needed to be away from the blast radius. She watched from the service station, her heart in her throat. Dominic took a sip of wine. Under the table he must have been unfolding the note. Sophie saw his posture change. It was subtle, a tightening of the shoulders, a stillness that came over him like a predator, scenting the air. He placed the glass down. He smiled at Vanessa. It was a wolf's smile. "Darling," Dominic said, loud enough for Sophie to hear over the clinking silverware. "I think I left my phone in the coat check. Stay here a moment." Vanessa blinked. "Oh, I can get it for you, Dom." "No," he said. The word was soft, but struck like a hammer. "Sit. Drink your wine." Vanessa hesitated, a flicker of unease crossing her perfect face. But she sat. Dominic stood up. He didn't go to the coat check. He walked straight toward the kitchen, his stride long and purposeful. He pushed through the swinging doors, startling the head chef. Sophie was standing by the ice machine. She gasped as Dominic locked eyes with her. He crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, crowding her against the cold steel of the machine. The kitchen staff went silent, knives hovering in mid-air. "Is this real?" Dominic asked, holding up the crumpled napkin. His voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. "Yes," Sophie whispered. "I heard her in the bathroom. She said the security is light. She said they are waiting at the corner. She wants the money by midnight." Dominic stared at her. He was assessing her truthfulness, looking for a lie. He saw none. "What's your name?" "Sophie." "Sophie," he tested the name. "You just started a war." "I just didn't want you to die on my shift," she stammered. Dominic let out a short, dark laugh. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun. The sous chef dropped a pan. Clang. "Nobody leaves this kitchen," Dominic announced to the staff, his voice commanding. "If you value your lives, you get on the floor, now." The staff scrambled. Sophie stood frozen. "Not you," Dominic said to her. He grabbed her wrist. His grip was iron. "You're coming with me." "What? No," Sophie pulled back. "I helped you. Let me go." "You're a loose end, Sophie," Dominic said, his eyes scanning the back exit. "And if Vanessa sees you're the one who warned me, her people will kill you before the police even arrive. You're in this now." Before she could argue, the front of the restaurant exploded. Boom! Glass shattered. Screams erupted from the dining room. They hadn't waited for him to walk out. They were coming in. "They got impatient," Dominic growled. He yanked Sophie behind the heavy stove just as the kitchen doors flew open. Two men in ski masks burst in, automatic rifles raised. They weren't looking for a waitress. They were looking for the King of Chicago. Dominic didn't hesitate. He raised his handgun and fired twice. Bang, bang. Both men dropped. Clean shots. Headshots. Sophie screamed, covering her ears. The smell of gunpowder and seared meat filled the small space. "Move!" Dominic roared. He dragged her up. "Out the back, now!" They burst out into the alleyway. The cold Chicago air hit Sophie's face, sharp and biting. It was raining. Of course it was raining. "My car is—" Dominic started, looking toward the end of the alley. A black SUV screeched around the corner, blocking the exit. Men began to pile out. "Vanessa really wants that money," Dominic muttered. He looked at Sophie. She was shivering, terrified, her apron stained with grease from the floor. He looked at the fire escape ladder, hanging 10 feet above them. "Can you climb?" he asked. I don't know." "Learn," he said. He grabbed her by the waist and hoisted her up. Sophie grabbed the rusty rungs, her fingernails scraping against the metal. She hauled herself up, adrenaline giving her strength she didn't know she had. She reached down, expecting Dominic to be right behind her. He was standing his ground, firing back at the SUV to buy them time. Bullets chipped the brickwork around him. "Dominic!" she screamed. It was the first time she used his name. He looked up, surprised by her shout. He holstered his weapon, jumped, and caught the bottom rung one-handed, swinging himself up with terrifying grace, just as the trash cans below them were riddled with bullets. They scrambled up the fire escape to the roof, the sounds of sirens wailing in the distance. Dominic kicked open the roof access door and shoved her inside. They were in the maintenance stairwell of the adjacent building. He leaned against the door, panting slightly. He checked his magazine. Empty. He reloaded with a spare clip from his belt. Then he turned to Sophie. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her shaking violently. Dominic stepped closer. He reached out and touched her face, his thumb brushing away a smear of dirt on her cheek. His touch was surprisingly gentle for a man who had just killed 2 people. "You saved my life, Sophie," he said softly. "But now, your life as a waitress is over. You belong to the family now." Sophie looked up at him, her eyes wide. Is that a thank you or a threat?" Dominic's lips quirked into that dangerous, captivating smile again. "Both." The safe house wasn't a house at all. It was a sprawling, industrial chic penthouse atop an abandoned textile factory in the meatpacking district. The elevator opened directly into the living room, and Dominic shoved Sophie gently inside before punching a code into a keypad on the wall. Heavy steel shutters descended over the floor-to-ceiling windows with a mechanical hiss, sealing them off from the city lights. Sophie stood in the center of the room, shivering. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving her cold and nauseous. Her uniform was ruined, her hair was a mess, and she was standing in the home of a man who solved problems with bullets. Dominic walked to a wet bar and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. He downed one in a single swallow and carried the other to Sophie. "Drink," he commanded. "It's brandy. It will stop the shaking." Sophie stared at the glass. "I don't want brandy. I want to go home. I have a cat, Dominic. I have a pharmacology exam on Monday." Dominic let out a dry, humorless chuckle. He set the glass down on a marble coaster. "You don't have an exam, Sophie. You don't have a job at Le Jardin anymore. And if you go back to your apartment tonight, you won't have a pulse." "You can't just kidnap me," Sophie shouted, her fear turning into anger. Dominic moved closer, invading her personal space. He smelled of expensive cologne, rain, and gunpowder. "Vanessa knows you saw her. She knows you warned me. If I let you walk out that door, her associates, the Falcone crime family, if my guess is right, will hunt you down. They don't leave witnesses. You are safer in this room with me than you are anywhere else on Earth." He pulled a phone from his pocket, not the one he had at dinner, but a burner. He dialed a number. "Rocco." "It's me," Dominic said into the phone. his eyes never leaving Sophie's face. "I'm alive. The dinner was a setup. Vanessa turned. I'm at the loft. Bring the medical kit and the laptop. And Rocco, come alone. If I see anyone else, I start shooting." He hung up and looked at Sophie. "Go shower. There are clothes in the master bedroom closet. Put them on. You look like a target in that uniform." Sophie hesitated, then grabbed the brandy and downed it. The burn was grounding. She marched past him into the bedroom. The bathroom was larger than her entire apartment. As she washed the grease and fear off her skin, she tried to process the last hour. She had saved a monster. And now she was his pet. But as the hot water hit her back, she remembered the look in his eyes when he pulled her up the fire escape. He hadn't looked at her like a pawn. He had looked at her like a partner. She walked into the closet wrapped in a towel. It was filled with men's suits, but in the back there were a few women's items. Not Vanessa's style. Too edgy. Too dark. She found a black cashmere sweater and a pair of leggings. They fit perfectly. When she returned to the living room, Dominic was sitting on a leather sofa, stripping down a semi-automatic pistol on the coffee table. He had removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle and ink. He looked up. The air in the room shifted. It became heavy, charged. "Better," he said. "Who is Vanessa, really?" Sophie asked, sitting in the armchair furthest from him. "She isn't just a girlfriend, is she?" Dominic slid the barrel back into place with a metallic click. "Vanessa was my fiancée. We were supposed to merge our families, the Morettis and the Kincaids. It was a business arrangement that turned comfortable. She tried to kill you for money," Sophie reminded him. "Not just money," Dominic said, his voice dropping an octave. "Power. If I die, the territories are split. But she didn't just want me dead. She wanted me humiliated, killed at dinner, in public. It's a statement." "So what happens now?" Dominic stood up and walked to the window, peering through a slat in the shutters. "Now? I die." Sophie blinked. "What?" "To catch a traitor, you have to let them think they've won." Dominic turned back to her, a cruel glint in his eye. "As far as the city knows, Dominic Moretti died in that alleyway tonight. And while they celebrate, we are going to burn their kingdom to the ground." The elevator pinged. Sophie jumped. Dominic raised his gun instantly, aiming at the doors. The doors opened, and a massive man with a shaved head and a scar running through his eyebrow stepped out. He held his hands up, carrying a duffel bag. "It's just me, boss," the man rumbled. This was Rocco. Dominic lowered the gun. "Lock it down." Rocco stepped in, hitting the keypad. Then he looked at Sophie. His eyes narrowed. "Who's the girl? Is she the leak?" "She's the reason I'm breathing," Dominic said. "Her name is Sophie. She's with us." Rocco didn't look convinced, but he nodded. "Boss, it's bad. Word on the street is you took 2 in the chest. Vanessa is already calling a sit-down with the 5 families for tomorrow night. She's claiming the Falcones hit you, and she barely escaped. She's playing the grieving widow to take control of your assets." Dominic laughed, but it was a terrifying sound. "She wastes no time." "What about the accounts?" "Frozen. Or drained," Rocco said, unpacking a laptop. "She had my access codes, Dom. She must have cloned my phone. We have 0 liquidity. We can't pay the soldiers. If we don't pay them by morning, they flip to her side." Dominic ran a hand through his hair. For the first time, he looked tired. "We need cash, fast, or I have no army." Sophie cleared her throat. Both men looked at her. "The Cayman accounts," she said softly. Dominic frowned. "What?" "In the bathroom," Sophie said, stepping forward. "When she was on the phone, before she talked about the hit. She mentioned numbers. I have a good memory for numbers. It's a Waitress thing. You have to remember order codes." "What did she say?" Dominic demanded, stepping closer. She read out a string of numbers. Then she said, "Transfer the secondary fund to the Cayman shell." She repeated the authorization code, Alpha 79 Tango. Dominic looked at Rocco. Rocco was already typing furiously. "If she moved the secondary fund," Dominic said, "that's $50 million. But she can't access it until the bank opens in the Caymans. That's tomorrow morning." "I'm in the shell company interface," Rocco muttered. "She initiated the transfer, but it's pending. It needs a second authorization." "She has my biometric key," Dominic cursed. "She took my tablet from the car." "No," Sophie said, her mind racing. "She doesn't need your tablet. She needs you." Dominic stared at her. "Explain." "She didn't just want you dead," Sophie realized, her nursing background kicking in. "If she wanted you dead, she would have poisoned the wine. She wanted you shot. Why? Because she needs proof of death?" "No, she needs a body." "Does your biometric key require a fingerprint?" "Yes." "And a pulse?" Sophie asked. Dominic went still. "No, just the print." "She's going to come for your body," Sophie said, her voice trembling. "She needs your finger to finalize the transfer. If she thinks you're dead in that alley, she'll be looking for the corpse at the morgue." "But there is no corpse," Rocco said. "The cops didn't find one." Dominic smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. "Then we need to give her one." The plan was insanity. Sophie said so, repeatedly, as Rocco drove the nondescript van through the rainy streets of Chicago. "You want to break into the city morgue," Sophie hissed, clutching the seatbelt, "and play dead, while a woman who wants to kill you stands over you." "I need to get close enough to her to get the location of the meeting," Dominic said calmly. He was in the back, cleaning his weapons, "and I need her to unlock that account so Rocco can reverse the transfer. Once she uses my print, the channel is open for 60 seconds. Rocco will be remote hacking the signal. He steals the money back. I wake up. We take Vanessa." "It's suicide," Sophie muttered. "It's Tuesday," Dominic replied. They pulled up to the rear loading dock of the Cook County morgue. Rocco had connections here, a night shift attendant named Larry, who owed Dominic a gambling debt. 10 minutes later, Sophie was dressed in oversized scrubs, standing in a refrigerated room filled with steel tables. The smell of formaldehyde made her gag. Larry, a nervous man with sweat stains on his shirt, pointed to a slab. "I put him as a John Doe from the alley shooting. But listen, Mr. Moretti, if the cops come in—" "You didn't see me," Dominic said. He stripped off his shirt. Sophie tried not to stare. His chest was a roadmap of violence, scars from knives, bullets, and things she didn't want to imagine. But beneath the scars, the body was perfect, sculpted. He lay down on the cold steel table. "Sophie, you have to do the makeup. Make me look dead. Pale blue lips. Use the kit Larry gave you." Sophie's hands shook as she applied the theatrical makeup to his warm skin. Touching him felt electric. She traced the line of his jaw, the curve of his neck. He watched her, his eyes intense. "You have gentle hands," he whispered. "I'm a nurse, remember?" she whispered back. She leaned in close to dab grey powder under his eyes. Their faces were inches apart. For a second, the morgue vanished. There was just the heat between them. "Sophie," he murmured. "Don't talk," she said, her voice breathless. "You're supposed to be dead. When this is over," he said, "I'm taking you to dinner, a real dinner, no shooters. Focus on staying alive first." She pulled the white sheet up to his chin. "Here they come," Rocco hissed from the doorway. "Hide." Sophie scrambled behind a rack of supplies. Rocco vanished into the hallway. The double doors swung open. 2 large men in suits walked in, followed by the clicking of high heels. Vanessa. She looked stunning in a black trench coat, her eyes dry and hard. She walked straight to the table Larry pointed to. "Is this him?" she asked. Her voice showed zero emotion. "Yes, ma'am," one of the guards said. "Found in the alley. No ID, but it matches the description." Vanessa reached out and pulled back the sheet. Sophie held her breath. Dominic was motionless. He wasn't breathing. He had mastered a technique to shallow his breath so effectively he appeared catatonic. Vanessa stared at Dominic's face. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She smiled. "Goodbye, my love," she sneered. "You really were too arrogant for your own good." She reached into her bag and pulled out a tablet. Then she grabbed Dominic's right hand. Sophie watched, terrified. If Dominic flinched, he was dead. The guards had their hands on their holstered guns. Vanessa pressed Dominic's thumb onto the scanner. Beep. "Access granted," the tablet's robotic voice announced. "Transferring funds now," Vanessa muttered, tapping the screen. In the van outside, Rocco was typing furiously. Come on. Gotcha. Transfer complete," Vanessa said. She looked at the guard. "Cut off the hand. I might need it for the safety deposit box later." Sophie gasped. She couldn't help it. Vanessa's head snapped towards the supply rack. "What was that?" The guard drew his gun. "Someone's in here." Dominic's eyes flew open. He sat up on the slab like a rising demon, grabbing the surgical scalpel tray next to him. In one fluid motion, he flung the tray at the guard. Scalpels and scissors rained down. The guard flinched, firing a shot into the ceiling. "He's alive!" Vanessa screamed, stumbling back. Dominic rolled off the table, naked from the waist up, roaring. He tackled the second guard, slamming his head into the steel table with a sickening crunch. The guard dropped. The first guard aimed at Dominic. Sophie grabbed a glass jar of specimen fluid from the shelf and hurled it. It smashed against the guard's head, blinding him with chemical liquid. "My eyes!" he screamed. Dominic grabbed the guard's gun, spun, and aimed at Vanessa. But Vanessa was fast. She had already bolted through the doors, locking them from the outside with a heavy thud. "Damn it!" Dominic shouted. He ran to the door and kicked it, but it was reinforced steel. "The funds!" Dominic yelled toward his earpiece. "We got 'em back!" Rocco's voice crackled. "But she's getting away. She's heading for the loading dock." "We need another way out," Dominic said. He looked at Sophie. She was panting, chest heaving. You were going to let her cut off your hand?" she asked. "I was waiting for the right moment," he grinned. "Adrenaline high." "Nice throw, by the way." "I hate this," Sophie said, grabbing a towel to wipe the makeup off his face. "I hate this life." "You're good at it, though," Dominic said. He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the ventilation shaft. "Come on, we have a meeting to crash." Vanessa had escaped, but they had the money. The balance of power had shifted, but the war wasn't over. Vanessa would assume Dominic was trapped at the morgue. She would proceed with her plan, the consolidation of power at the mayor's charity gala that night. It was the biggest event of the year. All the corrupt politicians, the crooked cops, and the crime bosses would be there. It was neutral ground. Weapons were strictly forbidden. "It's the only place she feels safe," Dominic said as they regrouped at the safe house. He was dressed in a fresh tuxedo, looking every bit the prince of the city. "So we just walk in?" Sophie asked. She was wearing a breathtaking emerald green gown Dominic had Rocco procure. It had a slit up the thigh that made her feel exposed, but Dominic insisted she needed to look the part of a distractingly beautiful companion. "We walk in, we look them in the eye, and we reveal she's a fraud," Dominic said. "But we need leverage. Vanessa isn't working alone. She has a partner, someone powerful enough to sanction a hit on me." "The Falcones?" Rocco asked. "No," Dominic said, adjusting his cufflinks. "The Falcones are brute force. This was surgical. This feels political." They arrived at the Art Institute of Chicago, where the gala was held. The press was everywhere. Cameras flashed as Dominic stepped out of the limousine. A ripple of shock went through the crowd. The man who was rumored to be dead was walking the red carpet, looking more alive than ever, with a stunning mystery woman on his arm. Sophie clung to his arm. "Everyone is staring. Let them stare," Dominic whispered in her ear, his lips brushing her lobe. "Keep your head high. You are the queen tonight." Inside, the ballroom was a sea of diamonds and champagne. The moment they entered, the music seemed to falter. Conversations died. Across the room, standing on the grand staircase, was Vanessa. She was holding a champagne flute, laughing with an older man in a grey suit. When she saw Dominic, she turned chalk white. The glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The man next to her didn't look shocked. He looked annoyed. Dominic stiffened. "I knew it." "Who is he?" Sophie whispered. "Senator Sterling," Dominic growled. "The man who controls the zoning permits for the docks. He's not a mobster. He's the government." Vanessa composed herself quickly. She whispered something to the senator, and 3 large men in suits, Secret Service types, not street thugs, began to move through the crowd toward Dominic. "We have company," Sophie said. "Stick to the plan," Dominic said. "Dance with me." "What?" "Dance." He pulled her onto the floor. The orchestra, sensing the tension, nervously began a waltz. Dominic swept Sophie into the crowd, using the other dancers' wires as shields against the approaching security. "They can't touch us here. Too many cameras," Dominic said, spinning her. "Vanessa is running towards the exit," Sophie said, looking over his shoulder. "Rocco is waiting at the exit," Dominic smirked. "But the senator, he's the problem. If he's involved, this goes all the way to the top." Suddenly the music stopped. Senator Sterling had taken the microphone on the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice boomed, "I'm afraid we have an uninvited guest, a criminal who has broken into this sanctuary of charity. Security, please escort Mr. Moretti out." The crowd murmured. The 3 security guards lunged. Dominic didn't run. He let go of Sophie and held up his hands. "Senator," Dominic's voice projected across the silent hall, "before you throw me out, you might want to ask your partner Vanessa where the bribe money went." The senator froze. $50 million, Dominic announced, turning to the crowd. "Stolen from my accounts today. Transferred to a shell company. But guess whose name is on the shell company?" He pulled the folded napkin from his pocket, the one Sophie had written on in the restaurant. But now it had a new note written on the back. Dominic held it up. "I have the bank records. Senator Sterling is the beneficiary." It was a bluff, a massive, dangerous bluff. They had the money back, but they didn't know for sure if the senator was on the account. It was a guess based on the zoning permits. The senator's face turned purple. "Lies! Get him out of here!" "If I leave, the evidence goes to the press," Dominic shouted. The room was in chaos. People were taking out phones, recording. In the confusion, Sophie saw something. A red laser dot dancing on Dominic's chest. It was coming from the balcony. A sniper. "Dominic, get down!" Sophie screamed. She threw herself at him, tackling him to the polished floor just as a gunshot cracked through the air. Crack. The bullet meant for Dominic's heart shattered a magnum of champagne on the waiter's tray behind them. Screams erupted. The gala turned into a stampede. Dominic rolled, covering Sophie's body with his own. He looked at the balcony. "Rocco!" he yelled into his cufflink mic. "Balcony! North side! On it!" Dominic looked down at Sophie beneath him. Her eyes were wide, terror-filled, but she was alive. "Twice," he said breathlessly. "That's twice you've saved me. I'm expecting a really big tip," she managed to choke out. Dominic laughed, a wild sound. He pulled her up. "Let's go! The senator just missed. Now it's my turn." They ran towards the kitchen exit, but this time they weren't running away. They were hunting. The senator was trying to flee through the service corridor. He was fumbling with his phone, sweating profusely. Dominic kicked the doors open. The senator yelped and dropped his phone. Dominic stalked toward him, eyes blazing. "You try to steal my city. You try to kill me. And you try to shoot the woman I—" He stopped. Sophie looked at him. The woman he— What? Dominic grabbed the senator by the lapels and slammed him against the wall. "Who gave the order? Was it you, or was it someone higher?" It wasn't me," the senator blubbered. "I just wanted the money. It was him. He made me do it." "Who?" Dominic roared. "Your father," the senator screamed. Dominic froze. Sophie froze. "My father is dead," Dominic whispered. "He died 10 years ago." "No," the senator wept. "He's alive. He's been in exile. He wants his throne back, Dominic. He thinks you're too soft. He sent Vanessa. He sent me. He's coming back to Chicago tonight." Dominic released the senator, stumbling back as if he'd been punched. "My father." Sophie reached out to touch his arm. "Dominic?" He looked at her, and for the first time, Sophie saw true fear in the eyes of the Mafia boss. "If my father is alive," Dominic whispered, "then we are all already dead. He is the devil himself." The revelation that Vittorio Moretti was alive hit Dominic harder than any bullet. Vittorio was a myth, a tyrant who had ruled Chicago with a brutality that made Dominic's reign look like a charity organization. He had supposedly died of a heart attack in Palermo a decade ago. But in their world, death was often just a strategic retirement. "We have to leave," Dominic said, his voice hollow. "We have to get out of the city. If he's back, he'll have loyalists everywhere. People I trust, people I grew up with. They'll turn on me in a heartbeat." "We're not running," Sophie said firmly. They were in the back of Rocco's van again, speeding away from the chaos of the gala. The rain had turned into a torrential downpour, matching the storm inside the van. Dominic looked at her, his eyes haunted. "You don't understand, Sophie. You don't know him. He will burn this city to ash just to see if I cough on the smoke. I can't win against him." "You already did," Sophie said. She grabbed his hand, forcing him to look at her. "You built something different. Loyalty, respect. Your men didn't follow you because they were terrified. They followed you because you were fair. If you run, you prove him right. You prove you're too soft." Dominic stared at her. The emerald dress was torn at the hem. Her hair was wild, but she looked fierce, a warrior queen. "Where is he?" Dominic asked Rocco. Rocco, who looked pale at the news of the old boss's return, swallowed hard. "The senator's phone. I tracked the last call. It came from the old slaughterhouse on the south side." "Of course," Dominic muttered, "where it all started." "It's a trap," Rocco said. "I know," Dominic checked his weapon, "but it's the only place this ends." He turned to Sophie. "Rocco is going to take you to the airfield. There's a plane waiting. Go to Paris. Wait for me." "No," Sophie said. "Sophie, no!" she shouted. "I am not the girl in the tower, waiting to be saved. I'm the one who passed you the note. I'm the one who saved you in the morgue. I'm the one who spotted the sniper. I'm in this, Dominic, whether you like it or not." Dominic looked at her for a long, agonizing moment. Then he leaned in and kissed her. It was desperate, passionate, a kiss that tasted of goodbyes and promises. "If we die tonight," he whispered against her lips, "I want you to know that you were the only real thing that ever happened to me." "Then let's not die," she whispered back. The old slaughterhouse was a decaying cathedral of rust and brick. Thunder rolled overhead as they pulled up. The yard was empty. No guards, no cars. Just the dark, gaping maw of the entrance. "He wants a private audience," Dominic said. He got out of the van. "Rocco, stay here. If anyone else shows up, hold them off." "Sophie, stay with Rocco," Dominic ordered. Sophie nodded, but her eyes said otherwise. As soon as Dominic disappeared into the shadows of the building, she turned to Rocco. "Give me a gun." Rocco blinked. "Boss said, 'The boss is walking into a room with a man who wants to kill him. He needs backup. Give me a gun, Rocco, or I swear I will drive this van through the wall.'" Rocco sighed, reached under his seat, and handed her a small, snub-nosed revolver. "Safety is off. Don't shoot your foot." Sophie took it. It was heavy. She slipped out into the rain, following Dominic's footsteps. Inside, the slaughterhouse smelled of old iron and damp earth. Dominic was standing in the center of the main killing floor, illuminated by a single hanging bulb. At the far end, sitting on a wooden crate like it was a throne, was an old man. He looked frail, leaning on a cane, but his eyes were sharp, black beads. Vittorio Moretti. Standing next to him, looking smug, was Vanessa. "You look well, boy," Vittorio rasped. His voice sounded like grinding stones. "You look dead, father," Dominic replied, his hand hovering near his gun. Disappointment ages a man, Vittorio spat. I gave you a kingdom, and you turned it into a business. You negotiate. You compromise. You are weak. I brought peace, Dominic said. Profits are up. The streets are quiet. Peace is for the dead, Vittorio roared, slamming his cane. Fear is power. Vanessa understands that. She has the stomach for it. Vanessa stepped forward, a gun in her hand. It's over, Dom. The families are with us. The senator is with us. You're just a memory. You're right, Dominic said softly. I am different. He raised his hands, showing he wasn't drawing his weapon. Shoot him, Vittorio ordered Vanessa. Vanessa raised the gun, aiming at Dominic's chest. Wait! Sophie stepped out from the shadows, the revolver shaking in her grip. Vittorio laughed. Who is this? The waitress? This is your shield, Dominic? A servant? She's not a servant, Dominic said, his eyes locked on his father. She's the one who outsmarted you. She's the reason Vanessa failed at the restaurant. She's the reason the senator failed at the gala. She has more courage in her little finger than you have in your entire empire. Vittorio sneered. Kill them both. Vanessa tightened her finger on the trigger. Bang! The shot echoed like a cannon blast. Sophie squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the pain. But she didn't fall. Vanessa dropped the gun. She looked down at her chest, where a red blossom was spreading on her white blouse. She looked back at Vittorio, confused. Vittorio was holding a smoking pistol. He had shot her. Vanessa crumpled to the floor, dead. Dominic didn't flinch. Sophie gasped. She was useful, Vittorio said, putting his gun down on the crate. But she failed twice. I don't tolerate failure. He looked at Dominic. Now, it's just us, father and son. I can make another heir, Dominic. I can't make another empire. Step aside. Let me run the city. Or die. Dominic looked at the body of the woman he had once planned to marry. Then he looked at Sophie, standing brave and terrified in the rain-soaked dress. He realized then that he didn't want the empire. He didn't want the crown. He wanted the girl. No, Dominic said. Vittorio raised his gun again, but he was old, and he was slow. Dominic drew his weapon with a speed that blurred the air. Bang! Vittorio's gun flew out of his hand, spun away by Dominic's bullet. The old man clutched his hand, howling in rage. I'm not going to kill you, father, Dominic said, walking forward. He kicked the gun away, because that's what you would do, and I am not you. Sirens began to wail in the distance. Real police, not the ones on the payroll. The senator talked, Dominic said. The feds are coming. They know everything. The shell companies, the hits, the faked death. You're going to prison, old man, for the rest of your miserable life. Vittorio stared at him with pure hatred. You destroy your own family. You are not my family. Dominic turned his back on him. He walked toward Sophie. He took the gun from her shaking hand and holstered it. Let's go, he said. Where? She asked. Anywhere. They walked out into the rain, leaving the old king to scream at the ghosts in the darkness. 3 months later. The small cafe in Florence, Italy, was quiet. The sun was warm on the cobblestones. Sophie placed a cappuccino on table 4. Here you go, she said in passable Italian. The customer, a man in a linen shirt and sunglasses, lowered his paper. I didn't order this, Dominic said, smiling. It's on the house, Sophie smiled back, wiping her hands on her apron. The owner has a crush on you. Dominic laughed. He reached out and grabbed her hand, pulling her into the chair opposite him. How is nursing school? He asked. Hard, she admitted. But the Italian terminology is interesting. How is retirement? Boring, Dominic said. I haven't been shot at in weeks. It's unsettling. I prefer it this way, Sophie said, tracing the scar on his hand. The news from Chicago had been explosive. Vittorio Moretti arrested, the Falcone family dismantled, the senator indicted. The empire had crumbled, just as Dominic predicted. But Dominic Moretti was officially dead. The man sitting in front of her was named Luca, a private investor with a quiet life. You know, Dominic said, leaning in, I was thinking about that note you slipped me. Oh yeah? Your girlfriend sold you out. It was a good line. I have better ones, Sophie teased. Like what? Sophie took a napkin from the holder. She wrote something on it and slid it across the table. Dominic picked it up. Will you marry me? He looked up, stunned. Sophie shrugged. I figured I'd ask before someone else tries to kill you. Dominic laughed, a sound that was full of genuine joy, something he had never possessed in Chicago. He took the pen from her hand. He crossed out the question mark and wrote one word. Yes. He leaned across the table and kissed her, right there in the sunlight, in a world far away from the shadows. The waitress and the king rewriting their own ending. Wow, what a journey. From a trembling hand slipping a note in a crowded restaurant to a new life under the Italian sun, Sophie and Dominic proved that sometimes the biggest risk isn't staying silent, it's speaking up. Dominic thought he was the master of his world, but it took a brave waitress to show him that true power isn't about fear. It's about what you're willing to protect. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of betrayal, action, and romance, please hit that like button. It helps the channel so much. Did you think Dominic should have forgiven his father? Or did he do the right thing by walking away? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next thrilling story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.